Welcome to the Plague Hive. I'm joined today by Xavier, who recently took down a Road to Nationals in Japan, facing down a whopping 5 victors in a row and coming out as the winner of that whole event.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right, let's not, beat around the bush. Let's quickly go over your list. That's the whole point of being here today. So let's switch over here. So your list is, we just talked about this a little bit, is kind of like sitting in the middle, right? Like usually we like to talk about Uzuri lists as being either red line, which at this point I think is just like a holdover name basically for stealth-based lists, or contract lists. That's kind of like the main two archetypes I think that are floating around at the moment. And your list kind of sits in the middle somewhere between these two archetypes. You run like some bits of both, I would say. So let's just go over the equipment suite that you decided to bring. I think there's like not a lot of big standouts there. So on top here, we got Black Tex, Spring Tunic, Nerve Scalpel. I think that's just standard stuff. We don't really need to talk about that too much. And then some of the interesting bits happen here in the sideboard or in the inventory. So Flick Knives, again, very standard piece. Spider's Bite, also standard dagger. So you have Spider's Bite and Nerve Scalpel as like the main daggers in most lists, I would imagine, in most matchups. And then the headpiece tech, we have Crown of Providence here and the new card, Balance of Justice, which I found to be fantastic against aggressive decks that draw 2, obviously. Like, that's what you need to do. So like Brutes, and other aggro decks that run Out of War, something like that. So how did you find the card to perform? I assume you were slotting it in those kind of matchups where you would expect the opponent to regularly draw 2 cards at some point in the game?
Yeah, initially I really hated it.
Okay.
Because I was so used to using Crown of Providence.
Mm-hmm.
And my play was really based around the fact that I hated it. So actually the first Road to Nationals I went to, I played Balance of Justice and I made quite a few errors because I was used to Crown of Providence. But once I got used to it, I found it really, really powerful. Obviously, drawing a card can really help negate a lot of the big turns that, those sort of high rolly decks can do. So, yeah, it's really powerful. I kept Crown of Providence. I did 1 Road to Nats with both, then 1 with only Balance of Justice, didn't really like it, and then went back to both. And I'm happy with having both. I think that it's important. Crown of Providence is just very good when you want to change your arsenal, which I think you do want to do quite a bit with Uzuri.
Yeah, it's definitely a deck where you have a couple of cards in that can really clunk up your arsenal, and you need to be able to, fix that on the spot, especially because of Codex of Frailty. Because like if you have something stuck in your arsenal, like I think the biggest offender to that is probably Shred. Like that's the first lesson every Uzuri player learns is like, be wary of arsenaling Shred. You have to really know what you're doing when you put that card in Arsenal. But there's also a couple of others that can be kind of clunky. And then the ability to just cycle that out whenever you need to, whether it's because the opponent is attacking with a Command and Conquer or just because you really need that arsenal free in order to play a Codex of Frailty, that's really powerful. But I think the fact that Balance of Justice just actually nets you a card instead of just cycling out a card is also extremely powerful, as you said, to just mitigate damage on those big turns that your opponents can send sometimes. So that definitely makes sense to me. Then the rest of the equipment suite here, you are on AB3. So you got Arcane Lantern, Nullrune Hood, and Nullrune Gloves. So fully respecting the Kano matchup, even though you're on 15 blues. Did that actually come up? Like, did you face a Kano at any of your Road to Nationals? And did AB3 help you there? Or was it more of like, I just want to hedge my bets in that direction?
So the first Road to Nationals, I was on AB3 and I took down a Kano. The second Road to Nationals. First Road to Nationals, there was no Kano that I had to deal with. They went down early in the event.
Right.
Yeah, second Road to Nats, I took down a Kano and I was really glad I had the Arcane Barrier. But things lined up pretty well. And the Road to Nats that I won, I actually lost the first round of Kano. It was my only loss of the day.
Okay.
So it really felt like a complete waste. But I think I was confident to play into Kanos generally. As long as things lined up, I felt like I could you know, not skill diff, but I could make them make bad plays or put them in a spot where they had to have it. I was pretty confident, but things didn't line up at all, and it didn't matter if I had Arcane Barrier at all. I just died. My hands were pretty bad. So
yeah, sometimes that happens. Like either they just have it on a turn where you happen to draw like all reds, and then AB3 doesn't do anything for you, or they just pitch stack their combo for the late game, and then you just die because they do like double wildfire or something, and then AB3 also doesn't really help you on that. So yeah, it's a tough matchup for sure for Assassin in general, just because we lack the aggressive tools to really pressure the Kano consistently. So things kind of have to, like you said, line up a little bit our way for that matchup to be actually playable, in my experience. It can work, right? Like if you get your extenders, you get your reactions, you can punish their blocks and stuff like that, then it can sometimes work. But overall, I would say it's probably one of the least favorite matchups for Uzuri, in my experience at least.
I had an earlier build, and it felt good into Kano. It felt like into really good Kanos, of course, it was always going to be close, but into most Kanos, it felt good. It was a much more like reaction heavy build.
Okay.
But this build, things have to line up really well, and they didn't. I still thought it was worth respecting because I didn't expect there to be really, really strong Kanos. But the guy I played against played really well. He pitch stacked it. It was clean. It was inevitable, really. I just said, "Oh yeah, thanks, well done."
Yeah. That's like the feeling you get when you play against these like defensive, pitch stacking Kano lists that run a bunch of D-reacts and stuff like that. You just feel like, okay, I just know that I'm gonna be dead by the turn, I don't know, 10 or so, because or 8, that's when you reach your pitch stack, and then there's just nothing I can do about that. It really feels like this inevitable loss coming up, and it doesn't matter what you do, really. Like it's kind of, if you face down a Kano that has the skill to pull that off, it's pretty intimidating, yeah. But yeah, like you said, not every Kano is going to be able to play up to that standard. So I think it's worth respecting the matchup if you feel that there's going to be a couple of Kanos at your events, right? And then, of course, there's still Rune Blades. Some people play those, so having access to at least Arcane Barrier 1 is also helpful if you're expecting to run into like a Vincent or Viserai. All right, we got one final piece of equipment here that I want to go over a little bit. This Graven Call, the new dagger that we got in Heavy Hitters in the expansion slot. I think you already mentioned that it was in your list, but you couldn't really get it to work, at least not in the Road to Nationals that you won. Did I remember that correctly, or did you actually get to use the card?
Because of the matchups that I played, I never bought in Graven Call in that event. Okay. I bought it in other events, and it was good. It was a fine role player card. It did what I wanted it to do. But in that event, I didn't use it at all. It could have been anything.
What decks are you running it into then? Because I would imagine it's actually fairly decent into Victor, just because it allows you sometimes to, flick an extra time to get some extra damage across, or just threaten 2 on your daggers instead of 1. Or is Victor actually not a matchup where you bring in Graven Call?
No, so I bring in Graven Call where I expect to get some silver, and where it has, so basically I bring it in for Dromai because I expect Dromai to be willing to give me a bit of silver. They don't really care about Black Tech that much. Black Tech is not that good against them. So, and it helps a lot with dragons if you get to that point.
True.
And then I bring it in against Kasai and Dorinthia. And probably Olympia, but I'm not too sure. I haven't tried it. And the reasoning there is that specifically Dorinthia, you can get to a game state where they can fatigue you. But if you have a weapon coming in for 2 instead of 1, you're in a great position. So you can both run out of power cards, but their weapon comes in for 3.
Yeah.
And so coming in for 2 is just really good against Dorinthia. And then Kasai, I was finding specifically because Eradicate is a good card against Kasai. Graven Call becomes pretty good. So those were the main matchups where I found Graven Call had value. Dromai, Kasai, and Dorinthia.
Okay.
I imagine it's okay for Olympia as well, but
No, that makes sense. Like especially into Kasai because they run a whole bunch of yellows, and then yeah, like you said, Eradicate gets a lot better because on top of actually milling their deck, it also helps you to generate a bunch of silver, and then that makes Graven Call a lot more dangerous. That's true. Okay, that makes
it
sense.
also hits the cell swords, and the cell swords can
Mm-hmm.
be. I think the cell swords are, to me, the only really threatening part of a Kasai strategy against Uzuri,
Mm-hmm.
because you generally have pretty good tools against them.
Yep.
So if they're looking at going towards that Raisin army late game, then Graven Call can make that a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, just
You're not 2 cards to attack with 2 daggers to kill 1 ally. Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
just
yeah. Now, like I think that's the main reason why it's good into Dromai as well, right? Like you can kill Chromai and Caloria with like just one dagger hit instead of having to use two, or having to have like other extenders like Hurl or Ravenous Rebel or something like that, which you don't run in the first place. So having access to that like one card clear on a dragon that is just repeatable, sometimes even in the same turn if you wanted to, right? Like you can go Graven Call, flick it on the next chain link, bring it back, and then attack with it again. Actually, if you wanted to, you can swing it twice in one turn. So that's definitely very very helpful in that matchup. Yeah. Okay, so let's go over the main board first. And I already mentioned like there's a bunch of stuff in here that I think we don't really need to talk about a whole lot because a lot of this is just like standard Uzuri stuff at this point, right? So you got like your stealth cards, you got your isolates, backstabs. You are running a full 12 blue stealth cards here. So you run the infect and sedate on top of the isolate and backstab, which I assume is to fuel looking for a scrap mostly.
yeah,
Yep.
that's correct.
All right. And then you have your like standard swap ins, of course. You got your Command and Conquer, you got Shakedown, you got Death Touch over here. Let's talk about Death Touch like a little bit, just shortly. I love that card. I'm a big fan of the artwork for starters, and I also love the concept of the card just being flexible and being able to give out tokens just as you need them. But I do feel that in the current meta, Death Touch lost a little bit of its power. Like the main thing that Death Touch enabled back when Lexi was still around was able to hand out frailty tokens, right? And that was like massively impactful to Lexi. So how do you feel about the performance of Death Touch in the current meta specifically?
So I wasn't much of a Death Touch believer. I actually cut it down in a lot of my lists, cut down to 1 or 2. Obviously, it's great when you play it Codex of Frailty. But so a lot of credit, I think, actually, generally for this list is due to Yamamura-san, who won Road to Nationals a week or so before me in Japan. And both of us play together. We both play Uzuri. And he was big on Death Touch and also big on looking for a scrap. So he put me on 3 looking for a scrap. He made me a believer in that. But he was talking about how important Death Touch is in that it's a unique way that Uzuri and Arachne to an extent can have their power, right? So when I played it early on, I was often trying to stealth card it in. And I think if you think about that as a value play, it's sort of like a bad swing big, right? And what I found is that once I got used to the idea of arsenaling it and then playing off a blue, attacking with Spider's Butt and then Death Touch and seeing the difficulty of that to be blocked and the amount of damage that you actually got being more efficient there, I found that I was playing it a lot more cleanly and getting a lot more value out of it. Okay. So I think the card is fantastic. I cut down because I had that philosophy of like, how many do you ever want to draw in one hand? Ooh, no, 1 at maximum, please. But I found that once I started playing a lot more from Arsenal, and once I really saw the value of Codex of Bloodrot, this card became really, really, really good.
Okay.
And now it's a 1 cost 8. Right. Now it's really a really important part of the deck and its power. So I wasn't big on it, and I think now, having realized the synergies and the importance of the card, it's a huge power card in the deck.
Okay, so it's more like don't stealth card it in, and more like try to get it into Arsenal, whether that's from, keeping it and then arsenaling it, or just, popping it in with Codex of Bloodrot, and then being able to just go 2-card dagger into Death Touch, and that's like the real power it has over playing like an Infect and then swapping that with a Death Touch. Would that sum it up correctly, basically?
Yeah, and the deck design represent sort of shows that a bit. Like, I'm not really trying to flip that much. I'm trying to incentivize my opponent to block. And so that's why I'm not playing 9 isolates. I'm trying to let my opponent block, let my opponent put 2 cards in front of my Infect or my backstab. Because Death Touch is actually better from Arsenal anyway.
That's true. If you're going for that philosophy, Death Touch is like the best swap to have, right? Because it's the one that feels the best. If your opponent just blocks 6, you don't have a shred, and then you need to arsenal your swap. Like CNC, Already Dead, Shakedown kind of feel like clunky as the 2 costs from Arsenal, specifically Shakedown, because then you need to have another reaction or give up a piece of equipment to actually turn it on. And Death Touch is just, you want Death Touch to be in Arsenal anyways, right? So any turn where you can go, okay, present a blue stealth, opponents block 6, you Arsenal a card. If that's Death Touch, you're actually happy, right? So that makes sense, yeah. True. Because then you can do, like, as you said, you keep a blue and you can do Dagger, Death Touch, or sometimes you just keep no cards and just Death Touch off of a Tunic, and that's still a very impactful way to, keep some tempo because the opponent has to respect it. Okay, that makes sense, yeah. I took it out of my most recent list, but that list is a lot more contract focused. So, and it has like 6 stealth cards in total, so it doesn't make sense to run Death Touch in that list. But I think with what you said in mind, it's definitely a very impactful card in the deck, yeah. All right, and then we got, like I said, a couple of the more standard Uzuri stuff. So Leave No Witnesses, Surgical Extraction, Codex of Frailty. That's also box standard stuff. We know that. And then you run 2 contracts that I think aren't in every single list so far, and that's Already Dead and also Eradicate. So what was the idea to run these 2 cards in the deck?
I think Already Dead is non-controversial. I think the card is fantastic. It's just on rate. But in this current meta with Kasai, Victor, decks that can get a lot of value out of their armor, this is really important. It basically says, if you are going to use your armor to block, you need to be really confident that it's going to completely block whatever's going through. So if they're blocking a stealth card, they are blocking 6, or they have the reaction back up to make sure it covers everything.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they might lose their equipment, and that's really, really powerful. But a lot of people sort of forget that it banishes a defending card, which can be one on a previous chain link. So I've caught a few people with that as well. But I think that one's non-controversial. It's just a good red card. It's a popper. It does. It's just a good contract card.
Yeah.
I think Eradicate is basically, this deck was a meta call for the weekend, right? And I expected Kasai players, Bolton players, Prism players, and Victors,
right?
Mostly. That was mostly the meta I expected. And if you I know the locals. There's definitely going to be 1 Katsu. There's definitely going to be 1 Dash IO. There's definitely going to be 2 Boltons, maybe 3. There's going to be such and such. So this card is good against Bolton, Prism, Kasai, right? And quite good against Katsu. Not amazing, but sometimes you just hit enough of their cards out of the deck that you can play to protect.
Okay.
So Eradicate, I think, is not worth running unless you have some pump. That's why there are cuts to the case in the deck, basically. I think it's a good card anyway. It's a safer card. Hold in your hand than Shredders.
Yep.
Right? That horrible feel bad if you hold your stealth card, you hold your switch card, you hold your shred. You're like, yeah, this hand is going to be great. And they're like, no block. And you switch and then after you shred. And
yeah,
it
doesn't feel great. Yeah, I think everybody's
Whereas
been in that
cut to the
position.
chase is always cut to the chase is normally playable.
Yep.
So Eradicate was specifically because I expected to play against those decks. If I'm not expecting them, I wouldn't play Eradicate, and I'd also take away cut to the chase. But it's just a good card. Like, if you think about it, at minimum, it's trading for 2 cards generally.
Yeah,
like
typically.
Unless they defense action. And if they don't block it, you're trading 1 card for 4 cards, so you're up 3 cards in deck.
Yep.
And if you cut to chase it, you can almost fatigue any deck in the game at that point, unless you took too much damage to do it. So it's just a very good yellow card, basically. But I did choose it because of the decks I expected to face.
Right, so it was like a meta call, essentially, right? So I agree with this. Like, I think Eradicate is basically a must block for any deck that has ever played against Uzuri, because if you just let a unblocked Eradicate through, and then worst case they have like a cut to the chase or something, usually you just lose the game there. Like, not immediately, obviously, but you will lose to fatigue at some point later down in the game. Unless the Uzuri is a very aggressive list with a lot of 2 blocks, which your list isn't. So I also agree that bringing cut to the chase makes sense. I think at this point, like, you run 12 contracts, right? So you got Already Dead, Leaving the Witnesses, Eradicate, Surgical Extraction, all the Majestics. I think that's like the lower end of contracts that you can bring, where running cut to the chase actually makes sense. I think there's an argument to be made to run like a single copy at 9 contracts. I think that's something you can do, but you will block a lot with it, because it's kind of harder to line up if you only have the 9 contracts. So like, the higher your contract amount is, the more cut to the chase you can bring. I think once you go up to 15, you can probably bring the full 3, bring the full playset. I wouldn't do it at 12, just like you did. But I agree that the card is fantastic, just because it's a clean +3. You can always play it out if you have a contract. You don't need to, have your opponent block the way you would have for a shred. And actually, the like Arachne hero ability that's on the card basically can be pretty impactful in a lot of the times, right? Because you can just be like, okay, I can either guarantee that I have whatever I'm looking for as a banish on top, or I can mess up their pitch stack a little bit. I can make sure they don't draw a power card the next turn. It's a very versatile ability. I think that's actually a bit underrated in Arachne in general, just having this on every single stealth card. And you'll notice in Uzuri, whenever you play Cut to the Chase, how interesting and relevant that ability actually is, to peek at the top card and then mess with their deck a little bit. Very interesting. Okay.
Yeah, very powerful.
Yep, definitely good. Okay, so that all makes sense to me. Like, choosing Eradicate as like a meta call, basically, instead of just having it in the list for every scenario, basically. All right, let's go over the rest of the deck here. The rest of the main deck, we got Enlightened Strike, also standard staple in Uzuri at this point. It's just a flexible card that you can utilize for whatever you need it to at the moment. Then we have 3 of Looking for a Scrap, which you already said that's the reason why you run the 12 blue stealth cards. That makes sense. Looking for a Scrap is a fantastic card, in my opinion. It's probably the strongest extender you can run if your deck supports it, in my opinion, just because the ability to go 1 resource for 5 go again is really, really above rate, especially if you can line it up with a Tunic. You can do like Tunic, Looking for a Scrap, Codex of Frailty, Leaving the Witnesses, for example, and that is a fantastic above rate 2-card play that a lot of decks will have trouble, really playing around, basically. So you said that you were not a believer in this card for a decent amount of time. So what has changed to make you go up to the full 3 copies of it?
I really like consistency, and in a similar manner to Death Touch, I was really concerned with 2 block, but also with how often I could play it. And so I would sometimes run 1, and I was on, 6 stealth blues, and it just didn't make sense to have more. And Yamamura is a much more aggressive Uzuri player than me. He's on the nimbleism, nimble strike. But he was like, 3 looking for a scrap is fantastic. You get so much pressure. And I was like, how on earth do you support that in your list? Anyway, he just played a bunch more stealth blues. And I tried it out, and it's just incredible pressure. It's so good. And when you think about a 3-card play that's something like looking for a scrap, command and conquer, and your opponent's just like 3-card 11 damage, destroy your arsenal is just insane.
Yep.
Or looking for a scrap, pitching a blue, play Codex of Frailty, play command and conquer. It's really good. It's really good. So it's a very nice high pressure card. You have to build to it, but it does feel like it's made for Uzuri. I really feel like it is. And this list is a little bit of a version 2, looking for a scrap list, where I did increase the number of blue stealth cards. So I actually removed yellow isolate, which punishes you, and the Kano matchup you really value isolate a lot.
Oh yeah.
But the consistency was a big issue, and that's why I didn't like it. Once I went up to 12 stealth cards, I felt like it was really consistent and just a really good card. I even considering cutting like 1 or 2 blue stealths in different builds and still running 3 looking for a scrap. But yeah, it's very, very good on above rate sort of card.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I run 3 of them, and I'm on 6 blue stealth cards in my list. But to be fair, I run Concealed Blade. So what I often do is I flick a dagger and use that for looking for a scrap, and then just bring in another dagger from the sideboard at some later point in the game. Which can backfire if the opponent has a D-react to cover the Concealed Blade. So you have to like time it right to actually make that play, but it does work pretty well, especially against the more aggressive lists where you're not really looking to double dagger anyways, right? And then you can kind of get away with doing like the aggressive early flick just to turn on looking for a scrap, and then bring back another dagger later in the game when you have a little bit of breathing room. It can be pretty impactful, but I agree that consistency-wise, building with a higher number of blue stealth cards is probably the better play if you're looking to play triple looking for a scrap. The way I did it is a little more volatile. It does still work, and just keep in mind, if you really need to turn on looking for a scrap in a pinch, you can use a dagger for it. So just flick, and then you have the dagger in the graveyard, and you can turn that on, because it's not looking for a attack action card. It's just a card with a power of 1. So daggers work for this as well.
Yeah. And the deck is built to it. Normally I play Concealed Blade. I'm a big fan of the card. This build doesn't fit it so well.
Yeah.
Most of my builds since this list, I've tried to fit it back in, saving a stealth card or another card to try and get my blue count up to 17 or so. But in this list, the consistency is really important, and it changes how you block with the deck a lot. You want to block with those blue stealth cards fairly early.
Yeah.
Get some fuel in your graveyard, count how many you have as the game progresses to make sure that you've got fuel for your scraps when you draw them, things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you have to make, sometimes in the early game, you have to do suboptimal decisions where you just consciously block with a blue stealth card, even though you could use that like slightly more efficiently on your turn. You just go, okay, I'm taking the opportunity to put this in the graveyard right now. And that's generally something that Uzuri does a lot, is like you try to get specific cards into your graveyard, right? Like either the blue stealths for looking for a scrap, and then of course your threats, like mostly Command and Conquer and Leave No Witnesses, that you want to have in your graveyard, and Death Touch as well if you run it, for Codex of Frailty. So you just have the options to bring back stuff, and you have the flexibility of making your Codex, as impactful as possible. Like nothing's worse than drawing an early Codex of Frailty when you have nothing in the graveyard that you can bring back that's actually a relevant play at that moment. Like you pitch it, sure, like you just pitch it away for a second cycle or you arsenal it for later, but ideally, at the point where you draw your first Codex, you want to have at least one of these 3 cards in your graveyard already. so that you can have something that you can bring back and be an impactful threat in that situation. All right, and then we got 3 more cards to go over. We got Sigil of Solace here, which I'm a big fan of. Fantastic card. I also like to run 2 because Sigil is one of those cards where you don't really want to see 2 in the same hand. Like, that's usually not great. But at the same time, it's the best stealth bluff, I think, in the game. Like, if you just play out a blue stealth, opponent blocks 6, you arsenal a Sigil. Sigil in Arsenal is so powerful in Uzuri. It's absurd. Like, I had a game against a KO at one of my Road to Nationals the other day where I went down to 1, and then I attacked them, and they played the Reckless Swing, of course, and they had this already, like, this expectant look on their face. And then I just played the Sigil from Arsenal, and you could just see his face, like, fall down. He was like, okay, dang it, he got me. He's not dead. I still have to play this out. So yeah, Sigil is a great card in Uzuri, in my opinion. Right, and then the last 2 ones we have here are a little more, I would say, controversial maybe. And definitely, I think the most interesting pieces here are actually 3 cards. Let's start with Infiltrate up here. That's a card that I don't think I've seen run in any list. Like, usually in that slot, people would run either Red Isolate or Red Infect, I think, are the typical 2 choices here. So what's the idea with Infiltrate? And also, please share, like, what was the best hit you got off of Infiltrate when it actually did hit?
Fate Foreseen was a pretty good hit, I'd say.
Okay, yeah, that is massive. Yeah.
Pretty good 0 for 7. Yeah, no, so I totally get it. I think Isolate and Infect are both really legitimate options. It depends what you're trying to do with the deck. So my personal preference is for Infiltrate. I think obviously Infect is potentially more damage. The power of Infiltrate is that it's deck damage. So I really value that. I think it's an important part of how you can play Uzuri, depending on how the game's going. But, you know, I think the ceiling on the card is really high. And I think the floor on it is not that low. So even if you're banishing, you know, some random 2 for 6 or 2, you know, random yellow or blue off KO, like, you can still look at it as, if you just hold 1 card and pitch to play that, you can still think of it as like being up, you know, 3 or 4 value anyway, right? Like, you've just made a 1 card 5 or 6 power attack. So yeah, I think the card's just pretty high value. I personally think the deck damage is good. But also this deck is about incentivizing your opponent to block and threatening to fatigue your opponent. The uncertainty of what it could hit is powerful and an important part of why I like it. And the reason I'm not running so many isolates is that I want to incentivize my opponent to block, but also I want them to have a reason to, like, the more mistakes they can make, the more powerful Uzuri gets. And I'm not trying to say that I'm just trying to, like, you know, prey on weaker players, but what I mean is that the space for blocks and options is way bigger when you present them with a stuff that doesn't have dominate. And I'm okay with that. I want to create situations like that.
No, you want to make a situation where your opponent has the space to make mistakes that you can capitalize on, basically. Now, that makes perfect sense. Like, that's what Assassin is all about, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it has some great hits. Like, hitting Fate Foreseen is insane.
Yeah.
I've hit, what else have I hit? I hit really silly stuff like Steelblade Supremacy, which didn't do a lot, sadly. But mostly, it doesn't matter. It's just a stealth card. You're probably going to switch it. But in terms of a 1-card play, the ceiling is incredibly high. So I was pretty happy with it. I've tried Infect. I've gone back and forth. Personal preference, really. I think they're both legitimate. Isolate, I think you're looking at trying to do a bit of a different thing with the deck. You're trying to, you know, just flip into on hits a lot. And this is not really trying to do that, this deck.
Okay, now that makes sense. Like one card isolate is like basically irrelevant unless the enemy dies from it. That's true. And then if you play like Infect or Infiltrate, you have a little bit of more impactful on hits that the opponent has to respect a little bit more. So you would say like maybe this is sort of like a more flexible Plunder the Poor in a way.
I think it's Snatch that blocks 3 and sometimes turns into Command and Conquer. But
Okay,
maybe
that's
overselling.
that's an interesting way to put it actually. Yeah. Yeah,
Might be overselling it, but to me it's a bit like Snatch. I
mhm.
think it's without the punishing 2 block.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, like think about it. If you have the resources to attack with a dagger, with the relevant sort of, let's say your spiders biting them, and then you play Infiltrate, then it really is playing a lot like Snatch.
True. Because it would
Obviously,
be like a 2
spiders
card block.
Spiders
Matchup dependent, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Like, it's interesting. I'll have to try that card out because I don't think I've ever played it. And it always seemed like a really interesting concept to me, but sort of like too unreliable to really fully utilize it. Because it's like Uzuri is already a deck that doesn't convert card draw terribly well, right? So running Snatch in Uzuri, for example, wouldn't be super valuable just because the deck does run a bunch of cards that you don't necessarily want in Arsenal, and you usually don't have a way to give it go again, so you can't really use it as an extender. But the fact that Infiltrate doesn't actually, block your Arsenal with the card that you hit off of it makes the random draw a bit less punishing, because at worst you just go, okay, I just don't do anything with this card, and it's just a card that my opponent doesn't have now. And at best, you hit something that you can actually use, right? Like you hit stuff like, I don't know, like you said, a CNC or a Fate Foreseen or whatever. And then it's actually incredible value. So, yeah, okay, that makes sense. It's definitely a little bit of a, I would say, high roll card, but it's interesting in a way. Like the ceiling, like you said, is insane. And the floor it's a stealth card that blocks 3, basically. Right, so you can flip
it
stuff.
Makes your opponent think.
Yeah,
it makes your opponent think a lot more than something like Infect or Isolate, which is pretty heads up on.
It's harder to calculate. It's harder to calculate what it does. So your opponent will think more about it, and that gives them, like we said, space to make a mistake on that block. So that's an interesting way to see it. Yeah, I like that. Okay, and then we got Codex of Bloodrot, which I think is a fantastic card. I love that. It's an aggressive card, basically, because it's 2 damage that replaces itself. So it's like a free yellow hurl or something like that, which is normally not a card you would run. But if it's free, why not? And then it also has a bunch of like interesting synergies where you can turn on your own death touches. You can punish opponents that don't Arsenal, which is a strategy that I've seen against Uzuri a lot, especially by aggro decks, right? Like a Fai or Katsu or something. They just don't Arsenal cards, so half your disruption doesn't work. And then Codex of Bloodrot punishes that because now suddenly they have an Arsenal and suddenly they only have a 3-card hand and they have to think about, do I protect this Arsenal if I'm coming in with a Command and Conquer after that? Or do I just let that hit? So what's been your experience with Codex of Bloodrot?
It's really, really powerful. I think between Codex of Bloodrot and Spreading Plague, the difference it made, especially to the Victor matchup, was just huge. I was losing a lot to Victor. I couldn't work out what to do because, when they block and draw a card, your disruption becomes really low impact. Like, they just drew a card, so who cares if they banish a card from their hand even? They're just like, cool, I still got 3 cards and whatever.
Yeah.
So Codex of Bloodrot is a really, really powerful card. I think it's super underrated. I was trying to make it work and I couldn't with early iterations of the deck. And the first 2 Road to Nationals I went to, I didn't play Codex of Bloodrot. And then I just had a bit of a brainwave and started running 3. I was always concerned about drawing through codexes of some form and the ponder being really useless or something like that. Turns out the card's just really high value. It's basically 2 arcane damage, draw a card, as far as I'm concerned, and sometimes intimidate. It's that sort of level because the power of Blood Rot is that it's so terribly inefficient to get rid of.
Yep.
So that on its own to me is sort of 3 damage. And then you have the utility, and that's where Leave No Witness, Command and Conquer, and Death Touch become a lot more powerful. But also, like, it actually, I think, adds a lot of consistency to the deck. It's essentially like what I guess would be called a cantrip, and at least from my Magic days, you know, like it just replaces itself. It replaces
itself, yeah.
It's a really good card, but yeah, the synergy with Death Touch is awesome. But also because I'm playing Enlightened Strike and looking for a scrap, you can pull cards out of your opponent's hand and then come in with your stealth card. And now they've got an arsenal. They're concerned about Command and Conquer, or they can't even block 2 cards on the stealth card anymore.
Yeah,
and you can just create some really big blowout plays with Codex of Blood Rot. So, I was doing things that were, you know, not crazy powerful, but really, really annoying. Things like attack with a dagger, use my tunic, attack with a dagger again, Codex of Blood Rot, Leave No Witness. And that's 3 cards plus tunic. Tunic's obviously a really powerful card to play around.
Yeah.
But like that's incredibly awkward to block. And it essentially presents 8 damage off 2 cards when you think about the ponder. So yeah, I think the card is really good. I actually think it should become a staple in Uzuri lists. I think it is seemingly to me one of the synergies that the deck was designed around that hasn't been utilized as much as it could have been up to now. And I wasn't using it my first 2 Road to Nats. And since I've been playing it, I just think the card's exceptional and really important for just breaking the efficiency of value-driven decks like Victor.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Codex of Blood Rot just because, like you said, it's never. I think what sort of made the card a little bit like unfavored in people's eyes was the obvious comparison to Codex of Frailty. Right, where you go like, okay, I have this on the one hand, Codex of Frailty, which is insane, one of the best, probably the best card in the deck. And then you have the other 2 codexes, which are obviously not quite as strong as Codex of Frailty. But I think if you start recognizing that they don't need to be because they don't serve the same purpose as Codex of Frailty, right? I think still Codex of Inertia is not a card you can really run in Uzuri. Because of the same issue that she doesn't really convert random card draw efficiently, typically. So Codex of Inertia is clunky, right? It's not a card. If I was playing like Phi, right, or Lexi back in the day, that's a deck you can run Codex of Inertia in, just because the chance that you can utilize a random card off the top is very high. In Uzuri, it's less so. But I think Codex of Blood Rot, just because of that flexibility of what it enables and the way it makes blocking awkward for the opponent in general, right? Does make it a card that's definitely worth exploring more, 100%. Okay, and then we got the last card here in the main deck, which I think is also the one that generated the most controversy when people were looking over the deck. Including myself, I have to say, like when this card was first revealed in the spoiler season for heavy hitters, a lot of people were hyping it up and were going like, yeah, this is the standout generic majestic of the set. This is like the chase card of the set, and was like, I don't see it. Like this looks like a worse version of Enlightened Strike to me, which is it's like a defensive Enlightened Strike in a way. But my first impression of the card was, okay, this isn't really doing anything that Uzuri needs, in my opinion. And to be fair, I that's still my opinion on the card, but that is also partially because I haven't actually played it, right? So take that with a grain of salt. I haven't really tested this card. I haven't put it into any builds, so I'm very interested in hearing like your opinion on it and your perspective after actually playing with the card and utilizing it. So where do you stand now that you've actually won an event with this in your list?
I think it's very good.
Okay.
I think it is an incredibly flexible card, and that's where most of its power lies. But I think it's actually the glue that, or how do we put it? It really fixes a lot of the potential issues that you can have with a deck like Uzuri, which is bad arsenals and things like that. It's a consistency card, and I think it's really, really good. I think it is the staple generic from the set, and I do think it's underrated. It's not to say it's some crazy power card. It's just very, very flexible. So this card, its inclusion in the deck allows you to play 6 ponders. It allows you to play 3 spreading plagues and 3 shreds. It allows you to clear your arsenal very cleanly, right? And those things are all really important for Uzuri. So I think this card is good. If you think about the floor of the card, it's a 0 for 4. So, and it blocks 3. Like, this is already, like, yay, it's Wounding Blow. It's Wounding Blow with a bunch of options. It can be a popper. It can be a 1-card block 5. In terms of 1 card from your deck, which is relevant for fatigue, things like that. It can help you fill out dominate attacks and stop you from leaking too much damage. But what I found I was mostly doing with this is clearing arsenal in whatever form it was. But also, it allows you to have some value off Codex of Frailty when you haven't found those Leave No Witnesses or the Death Touch. Like a 0 for 4 is still completely fine to play off Codex of Frailty. Especially if they're discarding a card, you're redrawing, then you've actually got a lot of value out of it. You can play a go again attack into a standing order. You've just put an extra 4 damage, a 0 for 4 on the end of your E-strike or something like that. I think it's really good. I think the flexibility, the more you play with it, the more you realize it's still great. And I would not be playing Balance of Justice if I didn't have standing order, because I absolutely need to be able to shift my arsenal cards. So I'll play Crown of Providence and standing order when I can, because I think being able to do that many times in a game is awesome. But yeah, I think the card is really, really good. I think it's not Warmonger's level of applicability everywhere, but I think it is not just a good card in Uzuri. I think it's a generally good, high utility, flexibility card. And it's not that far off Enlightened Strike. It just doesn't have the crazy modes that Enlightened Strike lets you make plays with.
Okay, interesting. I'll have to test it out, honestly, because I think this is one of those cards where you have to play it in order to actually get a feeling for what it does. And a lot of the times, right, if you're testing out builds, specifically on Talisha, right, what you do is you kind of look at the stats after each match. You look at which cards were mostly used to block, which cards were mostly used to attack, that sort of stuff. And I think that metric just doesn't work with standing order, right? Because mostly when you look at those stats and then you see that like 1 card in your list was used to block like 90% of the time, you go like, okay, is this a card that I actually need to have in the list? Or is it like kind of not that efficient because I mostly use it to block and I don't really convert it? And with standing order, you want to block with it most of the time. I would imagine like blocking with standing order is like probably the main way you use it, or would you say it's like split 50-50 between actually blocking and playing it out, or some other split?
I think I attacked with it a decent number of times. If you just think about like the incentive to the card, it blocks 3 and attacks 4.
True.
If nothing else is going on with your hand, you're incentivized to attack with it.
Okay,
but
sense.
I think I probably attacked with it like 30% of the time.
Okay.
Blocked and used its ability maybe 30% of the time. Blocked and didn't use its ability a good amount of the time. and attacked and used its ability, I think, in that event twice. But it was relevant. It was good. I was like, this is sweet. I just cleared my arsenal, attacked for 6. This is awesome. And it was relevant. Like it turned my turn into they have to block or they die. Instead of, like just a 0 for 4. And I didn't have the resources to play it in a different a different card in a different manner. So it was good. I think, like I said, the flexibility is really what makes this card good, but I think the deck design requires it.
Okay. Just because you run like 6 ponder sources and you run cards that are like awkward to have in arsenal, like Spreading Plague or Shred, and then you go, okay, Standing Order sort of fixes those issues, and I'm able to arsenal these cards knowing that I have ways in the deck to clear them, even without, playing them out. So regardless of what my enemy does to me, I'm able to clear my arsenal and, not lose value on that. Because, like, one of the things with Spreading Plague is sometimes you have to just play it for no value just to clear it out of arsenal. And that always feels absolutely terrible. Like when you have to pay a resource and gain no value just because you need to clear your arsenal out of a Spreading Plague. And Standing Order is obviously a way more efficient use of that arsenal in that situation, because you keep the Spreading Plague around for the late game, which is where you want it anyways, right? And you don't show it to your opponent. That's also relevant. You're hiding information, which is something that I always love with Uzuri. If you're able to just, sneak cards to the bottom of your deck without ever letting your opponent know what it was that you put there. And then obviously not paying the resource to get it out is also very good in that situation. So, yeah, I can see it. I'll definitely have to test it out. And I get the reasons for including it. I think I don't really see the power of the card yet, but I think that's also something that you just have to experience based on the design of the card. It's not something that you look at and go, okay, this is crazy. Like you said, it's maybe sort of like a little bit like glue that kind of just creeps into the deck and just keeps it together and makes it run like efficiently and without hitches. And it's not something that you can see at first glance, I would say. Okay.
Yeah, I think some of the criticisms on the Discord were that you're adding a bad card in your deck to allow you to play other bad cards. But my feeling is the other cards are really, really powerful and you want to play them. And this removes most of the downside of those cards. And I do think the floor on the card is completely acceptable as a card. It just, you're never really going to complain about a 0 for 4 that blocks 3, I don't think. And then it gives you all these options on top. I think it's really good.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so that's the main board taken care of. Let's go over the sideboard a little bit. We already covered all of the equipment. I think the defensive options here in the sideboard are also pretty standard, like Sink Below, Fate Foreseen are just, 0 for 4 defense reactions. If we had more of those, we would probably think about running them, but I don't think we'll ever get more 0 for 4 generic defense reactions. I think that's something that the game design is trying to move away from just because they're too powerful. And then we have Inertia Trap as the third defense reaction here in the sideboard, which is, I think, in the current meta, a absolutely fantastic card. Like, there's so many decks that will hit you with buffed attacks, right? Whether it's like Kaio, Bravo, Victor frequently, Kasai, Dorinthia, generally the Warriors. Like, so many decks will hit you with attacks that are pumped. Azalea, even the ninjas like Katsu, basically every combo attack gets a power buff when it combos, or almost all of them do. So this card is live in a lot of scenarios. So what was your experience with it? Like, did it line up and was impactful? Because one thing I found is sometimes it can be a little bit hard to actually catch the opponent with the inertia. A lot of times, especially against decks like Kasai that have a lot of resource outlets, you play this card, they get the inertia, they're like, okay, I can't arsenal, and then they just use the spare cards to do something like Grains of Blood Spill and convert the resources efficiently that way. What was your experience with that?
This card is insanely powerful. I think the timing is really important. You don't want to just like go, oh, they've got a buffed attack, time to give them an inertia. And I run 2 because the overlap of like, playing 2 if you need to in the same turn is wasted. It's just not a great card to see multiples of. But it also has great synergy with Codex of Frailty and Codex of Bloodrot. But yeah, no, the card is really, really powerful. The most use case, like as you said, there's a lot of meta heroes who pump their attacks. I punished a lot of enlightened strikes at that event in particular. They're like, here's my strike for 7. I'm like, cool, that defense reaction you are keeping hold of is gone.
True.
Yeah, it's really good. I often use it as a security defense reaction rather than like throwing it out there. I will block how much I need to block. And then if they try and do anything tricky, I mean, we're talking about decks that have that sort of ability, then you inertia trap them and then you punish them for it. Obviously, it's really, really good against KO. And that's what makes it particularly appealing at the moment. It's just basically always online, and KOs, if they don't have an agility token, can't necessarily use their whole hand, and they might want to like set up for the next turn, get that turn-to-turn value, and inertia trap really punches that. So no, it's really, really, really good, and I think it's quite a lot better than Frailty Trap is in this particular meta, even though Frailty is obviously very good against Kasai and a few things like that. I think Inertia Trap is an incredibly punishing card for decks that want to put a defense, mostly to put a defense reaction in Arsenal, I think, in particular.
It can actually...
I played against Old Dash and it just ruined them. They're like, here's my pistol for 3. I'm like, okay, mate, thanks.
No D-react for you.
Goodbye. Yeah, he showed me. He was like, here's my unmovable. This sucks. And I was like, sweet. Like...
That's fair, yeah. That's actually, it's kind of like, in a way, a defensive command and conquer, if you will, sometimes.
It's just often 6 value, if not more.
It just feels like copies like 7 to 8 of command and conquer in your deck, essentially. Or if you count codexes, it's more like copies 10 and 11, I guess. Lots of command and conquers. And Codex of Bloodrot means that they're actually command and conquers most of the time. Oh yeah, that's true. That is true, yeah. And then Codex of Bloodrot actually forcing them onto an arsenal again, so you can make that... that's a sweet synergy, yeah, that's true. Because one of the things, really nice. Like, I run Inertia Trap too, but I'm currently not on Codex, or... I am on Codex of Bloodrot, but I haven't played it that way at an event yet. And then one of the things that I found that happens sometimes is you play Inertia Trap, and then on your turn you have a Command and Conquer that does like just vanilla 6 damage, which is fine, but obviously you want it to be impactful, right? And then I think Codex of Bloodrot kind of fixes that problem, because Inertia Trap puts them on a 4-card hand, and then Codex of Bloodrot means they still need to deal with the Command and Conquer in a way that hurts them, right? So that's a nice piece of synergy. Yeah. All right. And then we got Shreds, which is a absolutely fantastic card, one of the best assassin attack reactions, but also one of the hardest to use well, in my opinion. Or I think generally in the opinion of probably every assassin player that has played Shred for a bit. It's so tricky to really get value off of Shred, and it can be hard to arsenal, stuff like that. So I would imagine that's probably the reason why you're only on 3 copies of Shred. And then also why partially you're on standing order, right? Like, is to not have to deal with arsenaling Shred at the wrong moment and it like clunking up your arsenal. I think Shred is... I think people misplay Shred a lot. They hold it thinking that they've got their opponent in a situation where they have to block, and a really heads-up opponent will look at Uzuri and go, "Oh, you're holding extra cards. There's no point in trying to block this out. I'm not going to give you 3 cards." It's a bit of a pummel situation, but Uzuri gets punished way more. You know, it's fine when your opponent overblocks pummel. You're like, "I'll just do it next turn," but like Shred is awkward. I think the yellow Shred is better than the blue and the red, just because it's really high utility. So I think
for me, an important way of looking at a card is what does it incentivize you to do?
Yeah.
But when a card blocks 3 and does -3 as a reaction, it's basically saying you can use it whichever way you want.
Yep.
And I really like that. So yellow shred is much better to me because it also pitches, right? Like red shred says you should use this as a reaction and not as a blocker, but I'm going to punish you really hard because it's a red card.
Yeah.
So I think yellow is really good. I think red is okay. Sometimes I play them in lists if I'm expecting to play against, some more Teklo-Vossens and things like that. But yellow is just the cleanest, sort of most neutral shred, and I really like it. But yeah, like it's a really powerful card. It's fantastic power for a yellow card. But because it's a yellow, and this is another reason I think yellow is so good, you can just pitch it. And pitching to a weapon is something that I think is always good to have as an option for any card you have in your deck. So Shredding Plague is fantastic like that. Extra Codexes are fantastic like that. Reds are much more awkward. So
absolutely.
I normally don't have Arsenal issues with Shred. Normally, if I get off a Ponder, great, I've got Standing Order, and that's where Standing Order is good. But normally, I think you just got to really think about, is my opponent truly incentivized to block? And in that case, does Shred actually punish them in this situation? And I think that's really the skill of Shred is should you actually hold it or not? And then does it end up in Arsenal because you got punished? Rather than Shred being, it's such an awkward card to Arsenal. I think it's like you probably shouldn't have held it. If that would potentially be the situation.
It's more of a player skill issue than an issue of the card being like bad or awkward or anything. You just have to know what to do with it, essentially. Yeah, I agree with that. That's true. Right. And then the last one, also yellow defense reaction of blocks 3, Spreading Plague. Fantastic card, and I think we've seen that used to great effect by both Uzuri lists at the Battle Hardened Philadelphia just yesterday.
I saw that.
Like that 4-hit Spreading Plague for like 4 Blood Rods that Colin pulled off against Rose on Dash was... Oof. That was one of the most brutal moments I think I've seen on stream so far. But yeah, a great card. I've seen it pop up in a lot of lists recently, usually not at 3 copies, because it's also one of these cards where you don't really want to see 2 of them in the same hand. So was running 3 in this case the reason behind it just being prepared for Victor, essentially, where you just go, okay, I know I'm entering like an event where there's going to be a lot of defensive decks that block a lot. So I need to have as many Spreading Plagues as I can to get like maximum value of them? Or what was the idea behind running the full 3?
Largely a call about Victor, yeah. So like I was losing a lot against Victor with earlier lists, and when I added in Spreading Plagues, it got progressively easier, as well as Codex of Blood Rots. So once you get up to the full 6 Blood Rot creators, Victor just doesn't want to pay his Blood Rot taxes.
Yeah.
The card's really good. I think 3 is not that much of a gamble. I think just like Shred, you just got to time it well. Get them into a situation where they're motivated to block with multiple cards. So Command and Conquer off the blue with Spreading Plague is really fantastic. You're saying you should block 2 cards, and here's 4 damage anyway. So yeah, I think the timing is really important, but it's an incredibly punishing card. But I think the thing that really sold me on 3 copies is how powerful it is to go first with Uzuri.
Yeah, when you have Spreading Plague in your deck. That makes sense. Yeah.
So Spreading Plague and Tunic is really powerful in Uzuri. Like, so getting your Tunic counter up, getting a blue Stealth card in your graveyard, and Spreading Plaguing your opponent for maybe 3 Blood Rots is just like awesome.
Yeah, that is like...
And that happened, I think, 2 games I played, one early in the day, one late in the day. And, I went something like, here's my Infiltrate, and they blocked 2 cards, and I Azuri activation and they panicked and they played a Think Below, and I switched into a blue stealth card, and then I spreading plague for 3 blood drops, and they're just like, oh, I guess it's my turn now. I guess I'll take 6 damage, and like it's a really good card when you're going first, and I think Uzuri doesn't against aggro decks. You don't really feel great going first.
Yeah, you don't.
You can ask for a defense reaction, but you want to get the destruction going. You want to make them think about what they're blocking with as early, first turn of the game.
Yeah.
Or giving equipment really early because they're worried about Command and Conquer on their turn 0 arsenal.
Yeah.
And Spreading Plague is really fantastic for those early turns of the game and the late turns of the game. So to me, it's a little bit of overpower or some equivalent. But I think I killed 2. I definitely killed 1. I maybe killed 2 victors off Spreading Plagues, where specifically they had to block, and so they blocked. I think I did. So I didn't E-Strike for 7 with 1 card left in hand and Tunic counter up, and they're on 4 life.
Right. Okay.
And they're worried about Flick Knives, right?
Sure.
So they block with their last piece of equipment and 2 cards from hand, right? So they're on 4 life. They've now got 2 cards in hand, right? And I Spreading Plague them. So now they're guaranteed to take 2 damage minimum. And I Flick Knife them, right? And now they're going to 1 life, and I've got another Flick Knife. They just did. It didn't matter anymore.
Yeah, it's deterministic at that point. There's nothing they can do. Yeah.
But they had to block the Enlightenment Strike, right? So,
I mean, they probably didn't have to block it with 3 cards. That was probably the panic moment in that situation. But yeah.
But they're motivated to block.
Absolutely,
and that's where Spreading Plague is so yeah. Getting Spreading Plague because it's yellow, getting it to the bottom of the deck and looking for a play late game is a really important part of how I beat most of the victors. Is timing Spreading Plagues early and late. The mid game you just want to keep enough pressure that they don't suddenly put a big value trade on you, which they would probably do once or twice in the game, but the Spreading Plague plays are really what cleaned up the matchup a lot and turned it from me messaging my teammates being I'm a little depressed, I think I have to change deck because Uzuri can't beat Victor, to sweet, I'm going to play this deck all road to that season.
Yeah, I just beat 5 victors in a row. I don't care.
but I was losing. I was something like 0-5 at local armories a few weeks beforehand playing Uzuri, and I was really this meta has just screwed me over because I'm really enjoying Uzuri, but this meta just shifted. I can beat KO, I can beat Kasai, but what's the point? And then on that week of Road to Nats, I played 2 armories. So I went 14-1 across the week, but I beat I think 2 victors every armory, right? Spreading Plague is fantastic against decks that are motivated to block.
Absolutely, yeah. I think what also is a thing with if you run 3, because most decks run maybe 1 or 2 copies, and then blocking with 1 in the mid game when you have to kind of feels bad because you're losing one of your end game pieces. And if you run 3 copies, you're all right, I can block with 1 of these. I have 2 more in the deck. I'm fine. And that takes a little bit of pressure off, I think, off of keeping that card in your deck, right? That's also maybe something that's a thing to consider. And then obviously, just that you built your deck around this kind of strategy, right? You have the 12 blue stealth cards, so it's kind of, if you're going first, right, in that situation, it's pretty high chance that you have one of those blue stealths in your opening hand, so you can get that into the graveyard as early as possible. You have the Spreading Plagues to punish your opponent blocking. So is Spreading Plague a card that you would specifically sideboard in when going first against aggro decks? Is that something that you did when they force you to go first? Because I would imagine most of the time, when given the choice, you would go second against aggro decks, right? Just to gain tempo into them.
It depends on the deck. So I generally would still not play Spreading Plague into aggro deck. Well, traditional aggro decks. It's still good into warriors. Like Kasai I would consider more of a mid-range deck, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
But like, no, I would tend not to play Spreading Plague into Bai, Katsu, things like that. It's good into Bolton because it's not an attack action.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm playing my Spreads and my Spreading Plagues into that. But no, I don't bring it in just because of the turn 0.
Okay.
So actually, if we talk about sideboarding quickly, you'll notice just for this list that I posted, the inventory is 22 cards and the main deck is 55.
Yep.
The 55 are the cards I always play.
Okay, so this is like absolute core. You never change any of these 55.
I do.
Never say never.
I do cut a looking for scrap against Kano because it's really bad.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
As in, you basically will. You don't play Flick Knives into Kano. You normally are flipping your stealth card. Normally.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with having 2 because sometimes you play your stealth card and it doesn't have dominate and they block 2 cards and you don't flip and then you're like, cool, okay, I've got some scrap fuel. But like generally scrap is pretty bad. So, but yeah, generally I run those 55 into everyone and then I'm choosing between my defense reactions and my shred plague.
Okay, right.
Yeah. And against decks that I think I might fatigue, I'm not playing Plague and Shred. I'm just playing Fate Foreseen and Ash Trap and Sink Below, right?
Okay, right. So like KO, Katsu, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then against decks that I need to pressure, I'm playing Shred and Spreading Plague. And the utility card is normally Inertia Trap, where if they have a reasonable manner in which they can pump their attack, even if I'm trying to pressure them, Inertia Trap is that good that it's worth playing. So it's really good into Control Dash, where I don't want defense reactions generally, but Inertia Trap is so breakingly good against Control Dash that it's worth playing.
Right.
I played into Tilo Bossen because once he's got some Evos, he's playing a lot of defense reactions.
Yeah.
Once he's got some Evos, he wants to attack with his weapon.
Yep.
Well, he just lost his defense reaction.
Sure.
So things like that. And then against some decks that can potentially fatigue you, I'm running all of those cards.
Right. So like Victor, for example, or I would imagine Bravo and maybe the Warriors as well.
So I'm playing against the Warriors, yes, because you can get fatigued by the Warriors if they're playing towards that. But also, Centauri Saber is a bit of a pain, so Shred and Spreading Plague are good there.
Yep.
The Warriors have good armor, so Spreading Plague is good there. But yeah, like Warriors and Guardians, I think you're basically playing just all your cards.
Yep.
And then generally it's just a matter of, am I playing potentially Fatigue or am I the aggro deck today?
Yeah.
And that it's a nice simple way of just like sideboarding. The sideboarding for this deck is nice and clean. You just have to consider that your main deck is 55.
Right. Okay. So that you normally don't run a clean 60 then, right? With that strategy. So usually you would probably sit at like 61, 62 cards, something like that. Okay, but that's reasonable, right? Like, because I find that Uzuri can often end up in a fatigue scenario, even if you didn't plan for that in the first place, and then just having a couple of extra cards to pad out your deck can actually make the difference between winning or losing that game. Like, I've had a game, actually the game I was talking about where I had the Sigil and Arsenal against the KO, that game actually ended up in a draw because we went to time and we were both in like the last 4 or 5 cards in deck. So that actually went to a fatigue scenario against the KO. And we just both I think we both didn't have enough experience with that situation to play fast enough to avoid the draw. But that's how it ended up in that particular scenario. But yeah, it can happen even against decks where you wouldn't normally expect it to happen. And then having those couple of extra cards can be pretty nice, yeah.
I think it's relatively common to fatigue KO with Uzuri. Or fatigue by damage.
Yeah, fatigue by damage, yeah.
So KO was one of the reasons I felt confident to play this deck. I feel like the matchup's pretty good.
Yeah.
And I took down a KO, basically fatigued by damage or somewhere close. But yeah.
Okay. No, I agree. Like, it's this is a KO is an aggro deck that is like pure numbers with almost no on-hit. So like you get to decide how you want to block. And I think that's kind of the situation that Uzuri wants to be in, is like where she gets to make the decisions and has to put the opponent on like the back foot, basically, right? Like you get to make decisions that are awkward for your opponent, and your opponent just, does their thing, and you can kind of decide how to block and how to interact with it. I think KO in that regard is like pretty easy to work with. Obviously, they can sometimes just high roll you and then you do nothing. That's just how it goes. Sometimes they just open up with the cast bones into a blood rush. They start with like, I don't know, send packing for 14 in your face. And you're just, okay, guess I don't have an arsenal now. And then they follow that up with a claw and another attack, and you just get your face beat in. But I think if the game goes like in a normal way, basically, it's Uzuri favored in my opinion. Not hugely
actually,
so.
I lost the first top 8 Road to Nationals game. So the first Road to Nationals I played with, well, the earlier iteration of this deck, which wasn't definitely not as clean as this list.
Yeah.
But I lost to Command and Conquer for 13 Go Again.
Yeah.
When I had drawn 2 defense reactions and had 1 in the arsenal in it. So
okay.
Real bad.
That's rough.
But my opponent was a really good player, and Japanese national champion, and and he set it up well and all of that. So it was him playing really well, but also terrible timing to draw a lot of defense reactions. But
happens.
Yeah.
It's a card game. We have variants. There's not really a lot you can do about that. Yeah. All right. Okay. So that takes care of the entire list. As usual, I will put the link to that down in the description of the video. And I hope the way we talked about this will help you figure out how to play this list, and maybe also give you an idea about how to sideboard into like different decks. So if you want to take this list for a spin, try it out yourself, you can do so. Boot it up on Talishar, shuffle it up in paper, take it to your armories. As usual, that will be possible. And now we are going to actually do just that. Take the deck and take it for a spin on Talishar and just play a game there. Classic Constructed, Public, we're good to go. Let's see what we get. Okay, we got a Levia. So I assume if given the choice, we go second here?
Second is fine. You can go first and plan to fatigue. I think that's also legitimate.
Okay.
But yeah, like second for pressure is okay.
Okay, sounds good.
I think one of the things do play to your style as well.
Definitely, yeah.
So here we're going to play with Spider's Bite. We're going to play all our defense reactions. So one of the good things about going first is that you can arsenal defense reaction. Make sure you don't get no shreds.
Yep. So like this, 63 cards, no spreading.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Submit.
Clean.
Deck. Let's see how it goes.
Cool. So if we have the option here, we want to block with our stealth card.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Backstab, yeah. Get that into arsenal, into graveyard as soon as possible as flick knives, not flick knives, like the fodder. Okay, they're rolling scabs. That makes sense. That's a sensible turn 0 play because you can't really get punished for it. They apparently have a bit of an awkward hand because usually Levia is trying to go for graveyard fill. And they just had a bunch of banishers apparently turn 0. So they're just attacking with the claw, which is perfect. We can go backstab, block with that, and just get into graveyard. And I think we're good with that. Like, we don't need to do anything else. And what we can do is, like, depending on what we draw back up, we can go Spider's Bite with the Eradicate into E-Strike for 7. Hopefully we get, like, some form of disruption. That would be ideal, but let's see how it goes. Infiltrate, okay. So, what do you think? Spider's Bite into E-Strike for 7 or E-Strike for 5 go again into Infiltrate? What's the better line here?
I don't think you're too concerned about like Scowling Fleshleg, blowout. So I think you're okay with Spider's Bite into E-Stroke here.
Okay.
Right? And that's the safest. Like you don't get, if they happen to flesh bag you don't lose much value. So I think you're going that way.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it's not a particularly strong starting hand, but like it's awkward enough to block, and you're getting a sink below an Arsenal. So
okay, makes sense. Fine. Yeah. Also, I think Levia doesn't have a ton of hits that we really want with Infiltrate.
So you actually take the Blood Debt if it's in your Banish Zone. So
that's actually true, yeah. But
Infiltrate can be really awkward.
It's actually not in our Banish Zone. It's in their Banish Zone, right? And then we get to play it. I think it goes to. I think it goes to their Banish Zone.
I'm not actually sure
if they don't block it.
I should check the ruling on it because I've never really cared. But let's actually check the ruling.
I think it actually goes to their Banish Zone, if I'm not mistaken. And then they would take the Blood Debt for it. But if we play it, it goes back to their graveyard. So
I'll have a quick look because it is a bit of a funny one.
Mm-hmm. That's an interaction that doesn't come up a ton, I would imagine. So.
Okay, yeah. So it's controlled by you, but it's in their Banish Zone. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good to know. Okay, good. Yep. Not that I played against Levia recently and hit an Infiltrate. So luckily, otherwise, might have played out funny. But
it's not a common interaction, I would imagine. But yeah, it can come up. Okay, so they're blocking with an Endless Maw, which is fantastic. That's one of the better cards that they can play out. They're clean blocking this. Okay, so
they're just fueling their graveyard.
Yeah,
they might come back with.
They might have another Endless Maw here, but that's actually fine. I'd be okay with that, to be honest. Okay, they're just coming in with another Mandible Claw here. I guess we just block with another Backstab. And then we just go Spider's Bite, over pitching the Sink Below with the Codex into Leave No Witnesses. What do you think?
So, yeah. There's not really any particularly pitch efficient way to do it unless you use a Sink Below, which is probably not worth it.
Yeah.
So I think you're fine to just block with the Backstab here.
And now we got
the thing is, right?
Yeah.
If they flesh bag you here, I don't think you're too bothered. It's
okay. If they give me flashback for that, I'm okay with that, to be honest. So.
I don't. Sorry. So like Sink Below is not a bad card to keep in your hand. It can represent Shred, right? Okay. It can incentivize them to flesh bag you even.
Right. Okay.
Though, right? Mm-hmm. So like you've given them a lot of information here. If they flesh bag you now, your turn's ended, right?
Okay, right, right. Makes sense, yeah, okay. So you would rather keep the Sink Below in hand here. Okay.
Yeah, like there's no pitch efficiency that's lost there.
Okay.
Luckily they've taken it. So now you're all good. But like having a Sink Below below a Codex, like potentially a Ponder off the Codex later in the game is really like not at all.
Not it's ideal, not okay.
No, it's good. It's a good thing to have.
Okay, Apex and Hungering, getting value off of the Apex, that's fine. So we are stacking it now that the Codex is on top and then the Sink is underneath it, right? Ideally.
Yeah, let's check.
Okay, and we got the Looking for a Scrap coming up on the Tunic turn, that's pretty good. Not really any impactful things, so I would try to use the Sink Below to switch out the Infect maybe for something else. Okay, they got a 6.
Probably want the Isolate on the bottom of your decks because Isolate is much stronger stealth
late
card.
Game, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
So I think we'll try and Sink Below the Isolate here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, they're starting with a Mandible Claw. I think I just take that.
So there is potentially Send Packing and Command and Conquer to follow. So I think it's clean value to slow early.
That's fair, actually, because it's coming in for 4. We're not wasting any value on it, so that's actually decent. Yeah.
And then we know whether or not we've got cards that we want to play out with our looking for a trap or not.
Okay, we get another D-React. Seeing a lot of D-Reacts early here.
That's fine. So now we're looking to block with Infect and Fate Foreseen, play Codex of Blood Rot, and then looking for Scrapman for 5. Yep. Right.
Okay, so we don't need to quicken because that's kind of like wasted anyway. So we just block for 7 here, I think.
Yeah.
Or do we try to? Oh no, we get a Ponder, so we don't need to keep an extra card for Arsenal, anyways.
Yep. And this Fate Foreseen will be what you're drawing off the Ponder.
Yep,
right?
Yep, absolutely. So
Fate Foreseen is really powerful.
I think. Do we bottom this?
It's
not a bad Arsenal.
Ponder, right?
It's decent. I think we can keep this, especially since we haven't seen any of our impactful swap targets. We haven't seen a CNC, we haven't seen a Shakedown. I think we keep this on top. Because then we can potentially do like 1 card sedate into whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
That's pretty decent, yeah. Okay.
We got to remember, like, yes, we've got standing orders, but we do want to make sure we don't draw a brick. A stealth card is not really a brick. It's generally pretty decent. Like, it's not great. I think
we do banish here, right? Just for the extra damage in this case. And we have 3 cards, so we have all of the looking for scraps alive anyway. So the go again is irrelevant, but we just have 1 extra damage here.
Yeah, you've got all the fuel you need in your graveyard, so you can just eat them up and get the extra
banish
value
happily away. Not a situation I've seen often that we have more cards in our banished zone than the Levia player by turn 4.
But like, I would be surprised if they
I know. I think they were thinking of value blocking, but I think blocking with equipment in this matchup is not worth it unless it actually represents damage. So we're not seeing any of our disruption. That's kind of unfortunate, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
So
okay, pulping for 6. Discarded a Shadow Pete, so this has Dominate. I guess we block with the Infect here and just take 3.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, not really anything we can do about that.
You could potentially look at blocking with Balance of Justice to reduce the damage you're leaking, but like I think you probably want to save it for a packing or a comp or
something relevant. Okay, so they're coming in with the Mandible Claw, and I would imagine there's something else as a follow-up, so I think we just don't block this.
I think it's fine to block this. Yeah. Even if you're just blocking the other claw, like you're keeping your options open. So
this is just 3. And I think they're going to come in with like another pulping. Okay, that works. And they discarded an Out of War. Okay, that's good for us. 1 power card out of the deck, and we can choose to full block this if we wanted to. The question is, do we want to? What does
we want to incentivize our opponent to block our Arsenal card, right? Yeah. So I think we can probably block with Isolate.
Yeah.
And maybe even Codex of Blood Rot and just play the Sedate out.
Okay.
I've actually been holding their Arsenal for a long time.
Yeah.
So
Isolate and then just play the Sedate, or would you block with the Codex of Blood Rot here?
I think we might block with the Codex here.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. The other
I'm down for it. Let's go with that. They still don't have Blood Rot. No, not Blood Rot, Blood Depth. So they are sort of incentivized to block here. I wonder what their arsenal is, because they've been sitting on that for quite a long time. Maybe they
I
have a
wouldn't be
blood
surprised.
rush in Arsenal and just didn't get a good way of converting it so far. So they
Yeah, I
might
wouldn't be
give us Scowling here, which is like I think would be ideal for us.
Scowling or Hunt,
This is like a perfect Scowling bait, I think, because looking for a scrap is a fine Arsenal, and if they give us Scowling here to keep the 5-card hand, I think that's a win for us.
Yeah, I would be happy. I think, if they don't block, we only did 1 damage from a card, but they're incentivized then to have a really big turn to not waste the Arsenal. Great, cool. Just traded a blue for 2 blocks.
That's okay, yeah. Obviously Scowling would have been nicer, but I'm fine with this, and they just play around getting the inertia here, so we don't switch, I think, right? That makes no sense. We don't switch for 4 damage. That's just, or 2 damage in that case. Okay, there's the disruption. There's the disruption, yeah. All right. That's not too bad. Okay, Dread Screamer, sure. Yep, all right. They got the hit. That's kind of I expected that to happen. So this is a bit awkward, this hand, to be honest.
Let's have a look at our graveyard here. Can we make a good looking for a scrap play? We can do looking for a scrap into Leave No Witnesses.
Sure.
With
that would be a 2-card. We keep 2 cards.
Being able to flex back. That seems like a decent play. I might just take the 6 to the face and then make some decisions on what they follow up with.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Because we also have a way where we go just looking for a scrap into CNC. It's not super efficient, but let's see.
I think we can probably wait on the looking for a scrap. We could even do something like Spider's Bite off the Codex and then Command and Conquer off the other Codex.
Sure.
And just block with Leave No Witnesses,
block with Leave No, yeah. I'm fine with that. Because then next turn we have Tunic up.
Yeah. I think that's an okay line.
Oh,
the thing
CNC. Okay.
Good. This is great.
So we didn't get punished for that. How do we do this? So I'm thinking now what we do is we block with Leave No and CNC maybe, and then play the looking for a scrap with the Codex and bring back the Leave No with the other Codex. What do you think?
The only issue with that is if they flesh bag, the only thing we've done with that turn is looking for a scrap.
True.
But I don't think it's too bad. So yeah.
I mean, the other option is that we block with Leave No and Codex and Black Text, and then we just send a CNC.
Yeah, I think they're very much motivated to block in CNC.
Yeah.
So that seems fine.
So I think we just go for this line.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to
now
do
we've
this.
got 2 witnesses in our graveyard, though, so we have to consider how likely we are to actually be able to play one in the game. But, they're more a late game card for when equipment's sort of fallen off, so not a big issue.
And I mean,
they've really been bagging their Arsenal, so I think it's good to keep
definitely important to pressure that. But I don't think they give us Husk here because it's kind of a little too early for that, unless they have the perfect. Yeah, okay, they have a Blood Rush, 100%. They just drew into that good Blood Rush hand, I would imagine. I think one of the issues was they always had a non-6 in hand. So they couldn't. I'm thinking they have a Blood Rush in their arsenal probably, and they're trying to get that out. So let's see what they do. Sigil here is obviously not ideal, but we have a fine crackback hand where we can go Tunic, looking for a scrap into Leave No, and we can block with Sedate and Inertia Trap. It's not the worst. Let's see what they do, and then maybe Arsenal the Sigil. And we can, if they do have a Blood Rush, we can use Balance to just draw an extra card here.
this seems like it might be a balance of justice turn in the making.
Depends what they
The other
do,
thing
yeah.
is we can looking for a scrap and look to just arsenal the inertia and try and bait the flesh bag again.
Okay, they kept the 5-card hand for the scabs. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Respect.
Respect.
Nice.
Didn't get punished for it. Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
Levia's an interesting matchup because they can actually fatigue you if their hands line up well.
Yeah. Just fatigued by damage.
Yeah. So really, you want to play around their 13 life total and try and make it awkward. Try and make them flip early is actually really good. So pressuring early and then kind of like play towards fatigue is not too bad. So we do need to put some pressure at some point.
Yep. Okay, so they come in with the swing big. So they probably have a follow-up to that. I'm thinking probably just another like some other kind of banisher, just so they don't take the 2 blood depth here. Question is, do we block here or not? Because 8 is kind of a lot to just take.
Yeah, it's a lot of damage to take. They're looking like they're quite a way ahead in this game. That's right. I think chances are they're coming in for 6 afterwards.
Yeah.
And unless we've decided we're blocking out a whole hand, I think we're probably just going to have to take 8 and then work on what comes next.
Yeah, okay. I mean, if they do just send a claw here, we're kind of punished for it.
I think if they send a claw, we block with sedate. We're looking for a scrap, holding 3 cards.
Yeah.
And we're really likely to be able to play our Leave No Witnesses.
Yeah, all right. Let's just take 8 here and then just see what happens.
They've had some good turns and we didn't draw disruption.
It happens, yeah. That's kind of like how these games go.
I beat a Levia in the finals, and I think...
it's another Command and Conquer. Okay. All right.
Good, great.
So we did not get punished for that decision. So I would say we just block with sedate and Leave No Witnesses. And then we just send looking for a scrap, arsenal inertia, play out the sigil.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfortunate that we have to block with all of this disruption, but I think that's just how it goes. They're playing more Arsenal hate than us at this point.
We just block with
We're just blocking, it's okay. It happens sometimes. Okay, they are taking 2 damage here, so that's not so bad.
She's the hardest brute to beat, I think.
100%. Just because of this massive fridge that she has access to.
Yeah. The slightly reaction heavier builds.
If we get really lucky, they flashback here. Yes, perfect.
Well, that's why I'm thinking it's good to have the sigil. Sigil is just such a good bait.
Oh yeah. And
so now we want to play sigil with it on stack to make sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they're thinking on blocks.
That we don't get it banished and then have to
absolutely. They're thinking on if they want to block more, if they take 3.
Yeah, this is good, but we're a good way behind on life and cards and deck though. So we're going to have to hope they don't have too many big turns, but they haven't actually used many Art of Wars and things. So we're a wee way behind it, sadly. Tail and Rhino are much easier, I feel.
Yeah, 100%. I agree on that.
I wonder if they feel like they got heaps of value out of that flashback. I hope they feel that.
They might, but that was a decent bait in my opinion. So that was fine.
So I think we're really hoping this turn to be able to use our balance of justice to clean up the hand.
We might not. I don't think they're drawing cards. They're just not playing that Blood Rush.
That's right.
So
I think I'll probably E-Strike here. It's probably E-Strike bottom Death Touch. And if they pump, right?
Yeah.
Then we block with that play inertia Arsenal Death Touch. So I think
Okay.
at the moment we're with Surgical and Eradicate.
We block with Surgical and Eradicate?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. They kind of do
We
the
have to
least.
keep our life total a little high here.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
Agreed.
if they CNC us again, they've just had a fantastic run of go against CNC,
Oh, yeah.
go against CNC. But that's card game things.
Yep. I mean, it would mean they've drawn like 3 CNCs in like, I don't know, they come in with a boneyard. They just have like an efficient 3-card 12 here. So that's not so bad. And they got, I think, all of the misses. Now they have 1 miss in their arsenal and their graveyard, so they're also fine with that. What do we do here?
Eating a bunch of damage, I think, and just sending back 7.
Yeah, I think
We're
so.
going low. Yeah.
Yep. No way around it, yeah.
Brute games.
Yep.
But like the thing is, like, they have a particular life breakpoint that we care about more than them. Well, not more than them being at 0, obviously, but we're really wanting to make sure that they get to a point where they're flipping and banishing a lot of their deck.
Yeah. They had that boneyard in Arsenal, by the way, the entire time.
That's
an interesting
unusual
block.
deck.
Okay. Sure.
This is an block to me.
That's odd, yeah. Like, I mean, I get blocking with the Apex here just for value, maybe, but it's possible they have a send packing or the last CNC, and they're trying to send that for like for 7.
Yeah, we should be
much
very
more awkward. But
the thing is, now we have much better codex of frailties, right? Now
we
our
have
frailties
zero armor left,
Yeah.
To be fair, we only have 1 Codex of Frailty in deck at the moment. The other 2 are on the bottom, so that's kind of unfortunate. Because I'm not too sure that we can drag the game out long enough for that to actually be relevant, but let's see what they do. So we got
big turns.
Yeah, we got CNC here, which is great. We have the sink below. Okay, they have an Out of War turn, okay.
Oh. This is good. They've got Mike and Out of War, so we're wanting to play Inertia out. We're probably wanting to block the Balance of Justice, and we probably want to shake down them rather than Command and Conquer because we're playing Inertia out. So like
Makes
we're probably
sense,
looking at.
So the thing is, like, they might not choose the pump here. Yeah. Oh, they choose the pump.
No, they have the might.
Buff and they have the might. They actually go for pump and draw. Okay, that's interesting. All right, sure.
Interesting.
And they banished a Deadwood Rumbler. Okay, sure. Banishing a blue. They must have drawn a really blue-heavy hand if they're banishing a blue. It's interesting.
Interesting that they didn't give go again, which suggests they might have.
And okay, they have a Blood Rush from Arsenal. Okay, interesting. Okay, that's an interesting turn because they don't actually have a surefire way to do go again here. So they might have screwed themselves up right now.
Claw 10 is still pretty good.
That's
so I
true.
think we want to block with Balance of Justice and Sink below here.
Okay,
right?
Sure. And then what do we sink?
Oh, that's not block if you click it right now. That's activate.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh.
You sure?
Yeah, you need to go back.
Yeah, okay. Now I'm blocking.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we sink anything?
Yeah, so we want to sink the Command and Conquer because we're going to play Inertia.
Right, okay. They're not going to have an Arsenal. Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. And Shakedown is our hand disruption. So we've got rid of their Arsenal. Now we want to slow their hand down.
Okay,
right?
cut to the chase. It's not too bad. Not really impactful right here, but I'll take it. Okay, they're coming in with another claw.
I think we might want to draw before we make a decision here.
Yep, because they're not looking to Arsenal anyways. They're sending another for 8 or 10 here, I think. So we're definitely cracking this. Okay, standing order. Okay, that's actually great because now we get to block 5 on their next attack. Because I don't think the Inertia Trap does anything here. I mean, it would still block for more, would still block for 6, so that's probably more value, but...
I think we're just blocking with cut to the chase here. And then whatever their follow-up is, we've got standing order if it's not super big, or we've got standing order plus.
Inertia trap. Okay, it's a slithering, sure. For 9.
Yeah.
Kind of... Big turn? Big turn, yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think we block with both of these here. Just to not lose that much life. Take 3 and then just, call it a day.
Yeah.
Nope, we're not choosing a card. We're just blocking 3. And then inertia trap doesn't really do anything here, but yeah.
I think we have to keep our life up. Like there's some argument for holding inertia and taking 6, but I think at that point
I'm not comfortable going to 7 here, I think.
And here we want to use flick knives, right? Yep. Like we're happy.
Yeah.
We could probably get a block with flick knives soon. So
they can reflick the nerf scalpel because I don't think they're on any D-reacts except for maybe reckless swing.
They might have 1 reckless.
It's not too uncommon to run 1, but we haven't seen it so far. They haven't pitched it. And yeah.
They've still got 2 blood rushes and an outer wall left in deck and we're on 10 left, so not looking good. That's right.
I mean, the thing is, like, the shakedown is kind of really awkward for them because they've used, I think, all of their endless moss, so they don't really have a good crackback here. So this is a pretty decent tempo play if they block this for 6. If they don't block it, or they just block it for 3, they are blocking for 6. Okay, right, that makes sense. No need to use flick knives here then.
We might need to use it soon though.
Just because we might have to block with it, but I think we're good.
Great, now we've got isolate shakedown. So
okay, they have a writhing, so we can only block this with 1 card anyways. I'm thinking we block with the infiltrate and then Arsenal the Fate Foreseen. And just take 3.
I think that's fine. There's an argument for like infiltrate and Arsenal means that when we draw into already dead, which we haven't seen yet, or things like that, that we have. I
think like preserving life with the Fate Foreseen and Arsenal is kind of more relevant at this point, just because we're so far.
I've used 2 command and conquers, so
They're also at a point where they can't really play out command and conquer easily. Just because unless they roll scabs for it and keep a large hand. So I think we're okay. They have 7 blood depth. Like they can't not play a banisher at this point without losing a ton of value. So
yeah. Good to do a color check here and see what we might be naming.
I think it kind of depends on if they block and what they block with. Probably red is still a decent call because most of their banishes are gonna be red. If they don't block at all, I'm kind of thinking about yellow.
Yeah, that sounds
because
cool.
It could be a blood rush turn, like 4-card blood rush. That's an option. But I think we just call red. Like just statistically, the majority of a Levia deck is gonna be like red. It's like usually 20 odd blues and then like 12 to 15 yellows and then 30-ish reds or so. It's like the usual one.
Looks like we're going yellow.
I think we're going yellow, yeah. Just to insulate. Yeah. Yeah, I think yellow is the play here, right?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, okay. Let's go. Okay, yeah, they did not have a red actually, so that was a good play. They also don't have any way to turn off blood depth here. That's interesting. What do we take?
What's their other 1 card?
Tear limb from limb, yeah.
Okay, tear limb from limb is pretty scary here because if they go tear Shade and Death Hydra,
I think we have to take. I think we have to take the Beast Within because if they do tear into and they manage to hit the Beast Within, they turn off their blood depth. And the Graveling is unplayable. And they can play the shade in here, which hurts, but it's 13, and it actually would mean that they take like 13 damage as well if they play the shade in here. So I don't think they do that. I think we have to take the beast within here.
Yeah, great.
And we have the Fate Foreseen to Arsenal, so I think we're okay. We're in a decent spot here. And they probably flip to Consumed here. Yeah, they're still playing out the tail end from Limp. They're probably just banking on maybe drawing something they can play now. But
our hand actually like 14 damage.
Yeah,
so if they flip, if they do flip, we're in a really good spot.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, they're rolling for Scab, so they're probably looking to just, double claw here. Yep. Okay. Sure. So yeah, I think we just use the Fate Foreseen. I think they just double claw and then probably flip to Consumed.
Didn't they play Lymphoma?
No, they pitched it. They were thinking about playing it, but I think they correctly realized that a 3-card talent from Limp doesn't do anything. Because they're not left with enough pitch to actually play anything. So yeah, I think we just use the Fate Foreseens here on the claws. Maybe we keep one, but I would definitely block with this one.
I think you're blocking with the Arsenal one first.
Okay, sure. Makes sense, yeah.
Yes.
Shakedown, I think we keep that. That's pretty good. Just allows us to keep up the String of Disruption.
Yeah.
I'm not hating that, so that's fine on top. And I'm pretty sure they're just gonna go for another claw here and then Arsenal the Graveling Growl. Yep. Yes. Yeah, exactly. I think we still block. I don't want to go to 4 against a deck that has access.
Go to 4. Do
go
it.
To 4. Arsenal the Fate Foreseen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Getting that value.
Yeah, it's true. It's better value. You're right. Okay.
Because now we're going Tunic, looking for a scrap.
Yep. They went
Let's knives out.
Let's see. Let's check their banish first to see what they have access to. So they got 1 red Dread Screamer, 2 Dread Screamers. That's kind of scary. And then a Hungering, a Graveling, and a Shadow Pete that they can play. And technically the Deadwood. So the Dread Screamers are kind of scary. So we have 2 turns now that are going to hurt a lot, I think.
They have to block this turn though, so...
Yeah. I mean, they don't have to.
No, they have to. We've got more than 13 damage, yeah.
Okay, true.
So, yeah, we're going to Flick Knives the Spider's Bite. So that the backstab death
Yep. That makes sense, yeah.
is much more likely to hit. So now that... Yeah.
Makes
they're
sense,
down 3, they're down to 10. It's always going to be close with Levia, but sort of have to rely on Levia not being reliable, to be honest.
Yeah, not wrong.
It's a shame we haven't really been able to make a black tech play. Like there just haven't been fans that have.
Like
we had to shut down.
If that Fate Foreseen was like a Leave No Witnesses, that would be awesome right now. Or a Codex. Or imagine if that was a Codex. That would be disgusting.
I had a line against KO in the Road to Nats in round 2 where they played Cast Bombs and they showed me that they had Blood Rush Bellow, Command and Conquer, Blood Rush Bellow, Beast Within, and a blue. And I thought, their hand that they're going to draw, they just do not want to block, right?
Yeah.
So I played Spider's Bite, Death Touch, Black Tech Whisperer, Codex of Frailty, Death Touch off Tunic.
Nasty.
And they were just like, I can't block this, I can't block this.
Yeah.
But after that, their life was so low. Like, that was just such an insanely big turn.
Okay, so they might actually have a... they might have a Reckless here.
Yeah.
which is
But
fine.
then if they have a reckless, their turn is just a 6, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Now, if they have a reckless, their turn does nothing. They just skip, because they would have to discard their last card to it.
Yeah, open.
So I'd be fine with going to 2 here, because we still have a sigil in deck. Okay, and I think we go for Blood Rot here, right?
Yeah, got to keep that pressure on. If they're taking 2 from Blood Rot and we're not dead, then like we can almost present must blocks for the rest of the games. Standing Order is good here.
Okay, so
Shakedown
that's
is good here.
Dread Screamer from, where was that played? It's a good question, I'm not sure. I think they played that from Banished. Yeah, okay, so that one's coming in from Banished. Yeah, so I think we block with the Standing Order here.
And the Inertia Trap.
And the Inertia Trap, I guess, because I don't think they're playing anything that's going to be pumped.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
What do they have potentially here, like Graven Growl or something?
Gravel, we know they have a Graveling Growl in Arsenal. So they're probably looking to play out that Graveling and then reset the Arsenal with the card they have in hand. So we know there's another 6 coming.
If there's another 6 coming, then we got to think about whether or not
I think we go to 3. We probably go like Infect into Shakedown. And I would say
Order might be better to just attack with here if they're going to 4 life, right? So it might be better to block with Infect and Shakedown.
Okay,
right?
And then just attack with the Standing Order for 4, just a 0 for 4.
Yeah, because so if they are threatened by Infect into Shakedown, they have to block 2 cards to it anyway, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So if they're going to 4 life, they have to block. Like, I think it's a pretty safe play to just Standing Order them here.
Okay, just for 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
4 or 6.
I think the value.
You like the Shakedown?
So I like the Shakedown. I think my play would be block with Standing Order and Inertia Trap. Then they follow it up with the Graveling. And then we use Fate Foreseen and Tunic to drop to 3, so we're not dead to Reckless. We take 1, and then we go Infect into Shakedown.
Yeah, and because we still have Flip Knives, they have to block with 2 cards.
Exactly.
Because we still have
yeah. So I think that's the best way to do this. I mean, there's a chance they don't Arsenal here, and they because they want to pitch to the Blood Rat, but I think it's kind of unlikely.
In before Pummel. Actually, we're safe from Pummel.
Yeah. We are safe from Pummel. We do have the Fate Foreseen, so yeah.
Yeah, holding the Fate Foreseen is really important. Yeah, right. Like we could have blocked that Claw and stopped 3 damage, but we have.
No, you're right.
We're quite safe.
I think getting maximum value from it. They could have stuff like Slaughter Beast. Okay, they're going for. They are just not getting punished for those scabs, though. Awesome. Okay, so they are choosing to get another 2 value here. Okay, that changes the math like a lot. That's interesting.
We basically have to block out now.
Yeah, I think so. So I think we do the same play, and then we just send the Infect, because if they don't block it with at least 1 card, they're dead, because they're going down to 4. And then
down to 4 Infect plus Flick Knives is your thinking? Yep. So, yeah, I think you're definitely blocking Shakedown here.
Oh yeah, 100%, yeah. And then I keep the Infect, and I don't Arsenal it, I send the Infect, because they have to respect it at this point. They have to give us a card for it, I think. So they're going for the Graveling here. And I think we still do the Tunic plus Fate Facine here. Just so we don't
we
die to
have to-
Reckless.
And really from here, we're just hoping to draw a Codex and a bunch of free
Codex
blocks,
would be
right?
good. We bottomed this just so we're getting closer to the Codex, I think.
Yeah. 3 life.
Yeah. They're going under 4 though, so I agree.
Yeah.
Like in retrospect, probably keeping the standing order would have been the better play. Okay, they banished the Blood Rush. 2 Blood Rushes
That's my
actually.
thing.
That's great. So they don't have a Blood Rush anymore. That's that. Out of the deck. And their last CNC is gone too. So we don't have to play around that anymore. So yeah, we just send this.
Yeah. See, that's the thing about standing order to me is that it's a 1-card for. Like it's actually incredibly efficient, right?
That's true. Yeah.
So. Oh,
Ooh,
I guess we're
okay,
flip moving.
they think they can kill us. That's interesting.
Oh, you needed to flip
yeah.
move.
Sorry, yeah. True.
Otherwise,
yeah,
full
no,
for naught.
right. That's true. So they're not blocking this. So which means they go to 3.
Which means they have to pay for their blood rock.
Yeah. Unless they can kill us, which is a realistic scenario. But
And
yeah, okay.
Do they have dominate here? Do they have the
If they have dominate, we're fine because we just drew a sigil.
The writhing?
They don't have the writhing in banished. They might have drawn one. I don't know how many they play. So they have 1 Dread Screamer left. Oh no, they do have the writhing in banished actually. No, wait, that's graveyard. Let's check. They don't have a writhing in banished.
Whole thing pretty scary here.
They do have the 1 Dread Screamer, which is kind of scary, but yeah, okay, that's the Dread Screamer.
Okay, so blocking Command and Conquer and Surgical on this.
Yep, absolutely. And we're free to block with Flick Knives here, obviously, because it's not going to do anything.
Yeah. So Endless Maw is...
Endless Maw
Oh, we go to 1. Endless Maw, we go to 1. If they have... Oh, did they use all their Endless Maw?
If they hit another Scab Skins here, we're just dead. Okay, they have Writhing. We're good.
Great. GG. Nice. Close. They had a really good start.
That's pretty good. So we go Sigil here.
Sigil.
And then we block like this, and we're good to go.
Yeah. Nice.
Nice. Very good. And now they just die. Okay. Good game. Nice. Okay, that was tight though. That came down like pretty close. I think the one turn where they just didn't have a banisher and then we decided to call yellow, I think that was absolutely the right call to go for yellow here, even though they didn't have a blood rush. Taking the beast within, which was like their only way of somehow getting a banish in that turn, I think was pretty instrumental, because their turn was just double claw and then flip to consumed. So very nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really good. Yeah.
I like
and
it.
You can see like the pressure is really important in this matchup. You can never actually just block them out, because unless they get really lucky with scab. They had pretty good scab skin rolls here.
Oh yeah. Like I think they whiffed like once out of like 4 rolls. And they didn't run gamblers, so they definitely didn't get punished for that. But yeah, pretty good. And we're sitting at like average value per turn of like 13. It's not too bad for an Uzuri list, anyways. Pretty solid, I would say. And yeah, it just lined up pretty well, I would say. We're still at 21 cards. They're at 24, and they were in consume mode, so they're like banishing stuff. Overall, pretty decent, I would say. Yeah, but I feel like you can kind of expect Levia to like have 1 turn per game where their deck just doesn't line up and it just draw a hand that doesn't really function all that well. Yeah. Usually not more than 1. Like the deck has gotten to a point where the consistency is just high enough that it doesn't really happen multiple times per game. But I feel like it mostly still happens like once per game, I would say. And then if you can capitalize on that, I mean, they took like an extra, what was it, like 4 damage because of that, just from Blood Debt. So, yeah, definitely worked.
I think they misblocked with their equipment, and I think that was pretty critical.
Oh, yeah.
Because it allowed us to play, our on hits are really important. Death Touch is only a 6 power if it doesn't hit, right?
Yep.
So I think they misblocked a little bit with their equipment there.
I imagine if they had 1 block on equipment left and they could have just put that in front of that infect, that would have completely changed the math on the entire game. Yeah.
Although I do think we probably should have just standing ordered there. But
yeah, I think in retrospect, like I didn't see the line where they just completely disrespect the Blood Rod and just roll for scabs to get an extra claw swing in. To be honest, like I'm still in that. Like I used to play Levia, right? Like Levia was the first deck that I played like seriously. I would say I don't really play her anymore because just the variance that Brute has to deal with just tilts me too much. I just find it's not a play style that I terribly enjoy, so I just switched to maining Uzuri for the most part because she's just more fun. And
she's
not more fun, but like she's the more consistent deck out of the two, and you don't have to deal with this amount of variance that much. Like you can have inconsistent hands in Uzuri where you just draw stealth cards and stuff, but at least you don't have to deal with Blood Debt, right? You don't have to deal with your deck suddenly saying, yeah, no, today is just not gonna work out, So
I see them all as variance, but Levia, you feel the variance. You roll that die.
You get punished a lot harder. So,
emotional experience.
Yeah, like so. What I was saying is like I'm a very conservative Levia player, right? So I would almost never roll scab skins when I didn't have Gambler's Gloves up. So I think that's why that line just didn't occur to me. That you could just go, okay, just hope for a 4 so I can send another 3 damage. So in retrospect, I agree it would have been better to block with the infect and then keep the standing order. But I think at that point, we already committed to the decision. It worked out, so, good enough. But yeah, fair enough. Like they would have had to block the standing order in some way, which actually would have meant that they wouldn't have died, because blocking 1 card on the standing order is 1 damage, but then they wouldn't have been able to play the Writhing Beast Hulk so yeah, it's just kind of not that useful to talk about what could have been if the game ended up one way and it worked out, we won it, so all good. All right, so I think with that all done, that's about time to wrap it up. We're sitting at slightly over 2 hours right now, so I would say about average for a Playcard video. Okay, like I said already, if you guys want to take this deck for a spin, link to it will be down in the description of the video as usual. And Xavier, thanks for being here with me, taking the time to go through your deck. And do you have anything to add, like any last words of wisdom you want to share with the people out there?
No, I mean, just get the reps on the deck. I think it's not super well positioned in the meta. It doesn't have a great draw my matchup. You can get there, but it's a really fun deck. It's very rewarding. It's a deck that you can skill gap people on, but you have to be, you have to play it at a high level to really get everything out of it. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoys it. I think it's really moving towards where Uzuri wants to be, especially with the Codex of Blood Rods. I think that really adds a lot of power to the deck.
Yep.
So I really recommend people give that a chance, and Standing Order as well. Fantastic card. But yeah, just enjoy it. She's the most fun hero. She's just really, really interesting and disruptive, and great gameplay.
I agree. Like definitely the most fun I've had in Flesh and Blood since I started playing it. 100% agree on that. All right, with that, I think we're done here. Thanks for watching, and see you guys in the next one. Bye.